The security camera showed my reflection walking down the hallway behind me. Problem was, I was standing perfectly still in the lobby. My name's Jake, and I'd been working security at the Meridian office complex for about 8 months when this happened. 12 floors of lawyers, accountants, and consulting firms. During the day, the place buzzed with activity. At night, it was just me and the ghosts of corporate ambition. The building was old, built in 1978, with that distinctly 70s architecture. Lots of brown brick and tinted windows. The heating system made weird noises, the elevators creaked, and the fluorescent lights flickered just enough to keep you on edge. Perfect place for a night security job, really. I was doing my 2 a.m. rounds, checking each floor methodically. Start at the basement, work my way up to the 12th floor, then back down to my desk in the lobby. Same routine every night. The management company was strict about procedures. Every door had to be checked, every window verified secure, every entry logged in the digital system. The 7th floor housed Patterson and Associates, a mid-sized law firm. Typical setup: reception area, conference rooms, individual offices lining the outer walls. I'd checked this floor hundreds of times, never anything unusual. But that night, as I walked down the main corridor, I heard something that made me stop. Typing. Someone was typing on a keyboard, the echoing from one of the corner offices. I checked my watch. 2:17 a.m. The building had been empty since 6 p.m. I'd watched the last employees leave myself. The typing stopped. I approached the corner office slowly, my hand on the radio. The nameplate read, David Patterson, Senior Partner. Through the frosted glass door, I could see a faint glow from inside, like a computer monitor was on. I tried the handle. Locked, as it should be. But the typing started again, faster this time, almost frantic. Hello? Security here. The building is closed. The typing stopped immediately. The glow from inside the office went dark. I used my master key to open the door. The office was empty, computer off, desk clean, everything in perfect order. But the chair was still spinning slightly, like someone had just gotten up from it. I logged the incident and continued my rounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. When I got back to the lobby, I checked the security cameras for the 7th floor. The timestamp showed 2:15 a.m. On the screen, I watched myself walking down the corridor toward Patterson. But then I saw something that made my blood freeze. In the background, barely visible in the shadows, another figure was walking behind me. Same height, same build, wearing the same security uniform. The figure followed me down the corridor, staying just at the edge of the camera's range. I rewound the footage. There it was again, my doppelganger, trailing behind me like a shadow. But I'd been alone on that floor. I was certain of it. I called my supervisor, Tom, but got his voicemail. Night shift security wasn't exactly a priority for management unless something was actually stolen or damaged. The rest of the night passed without incident, but I couldn't concentrate. Every time I looked at the security monitors, I expected to see myself in places I wasn't. When the morning shift arrived, I mentioned the incident to Carlos, the day security supervisor. He laughed it off. Night shift paranoia, man.
Happens to everyone eventually. Your brain starts playing tricks when you're alone too long. But that afternoon, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that figure on the camera, the way it moved exactly like me. I decided to do some research on the building. What I found in the local newspaper archives made me wish I'd called in sick.
The Meridian office complex had been built on the site of the old Meridian Hotel, which had burned down in 1977. 15 people died in that fire, including the night security guard, a man named Robert Chen. According to the article, Chen had been making his rounds when the fire started. His body was found in the 7th floor corridor, apparently trying to evacuate guests when the smoke overcame him. I stared at Chen's photograph in the newspaper. Asian man, about my height and build, wearing a security uniform that looked remarkably similar to mine. That night, I almost called in sick. But rent was due, and security jobs weren't easy to come by. I showed up for my shift, but I brought backup, a digital camera and a voice recorder. Everything seemed normal until my 2 a.m. rounds. As I approached the 7th floor, I could hear it again, typing from Patterson's office. This time, I was ready. I started recording audio as I approached the office. The typing was definitely there, captured clearly on the recorder. I took photos of the darkened office through the frosted glass. When I opened the door, the office was empty again. But this time I noticed something I'd missed before. On Patterson's desk, barely visible in the darkness, was a sheet of paper that hadn't been there during my earlier rounds. I turned on my flashlight. The paper was covered with typed text, but it wasn't in English. It looked like Chinese characters, row after row of them covering the entire page. I photographed the document and left it exactly where I'd found it. Back in the lobby, I checked the security cameras again. The footage showed me approaching Patterson's office at 2:15 a.m., but this time, the shadow figure wasn't following behind me. It was already there, waiting inside the office. I could see its silhouette through the frosted glass, sitting at Patterson's desk, typing furiously. When I opened the door in the recording, the figure simply vanished, like smoke dissipating. I saved all the footage to a USB drive and copied the audio recording. Evidence, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The next morning, I brought everything to Tom. The photos, the audio, the video footage. He listened to my explanation with an increasingly skeptical expression. "Jake, I've been in security for 20 years. I've seen stress do weird things to people. Maybe you should take a few days off, get some rest." But the evidence could be explained a dozen different ways. Camera glitches, audio interference, someone playing pranks. There's always a rational explanation. He was dismissing me, but I could see something in his eyes, fear, like he knew more than he was saying. That afternoon, I called Patterson and Associates directly. A receptionist answered. "Hi, I'm with Building Security. I need to ask about Mr. Patterson's office. Has anyone been working late recently?" "Mr. Patterson? Sir, David Patterson passed away 3 months ago. Heart attack. His office has been sealed pending probate. No one's been in there since his death." The phone slipped from my hand. A dead lawyer's office, a dead security guard from 1977, and somehow they were connected to what was happening on the 7th floor. I spent the day researching Robert Chen, found his obituary, his employment records, and even tracked down his daughter, who lived across town. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. Lisa Chen was in her 50s, a school teacher with kind eyes and her father's features. When I told her about the incidents at the building, she didn't seem surprised.
I saved all the footage to a USB drive and copied the audio recording. Evidence. Proof that I wasn't losing my mind. The next morning, I brought everything to Tom. The photos, the audio, the video footage. He listened to my explanation with an increasingly skeptical expression. "Jake, I've been in security for 20 years. I've seen stress do weird things to people. Maybe you should take a few days off, get some rest." But the evidence could be explained a dozen different ways. Camera glitches, audio interference, someone playing pranks. There's always a rational explanation. He was dismissing me, but I could see something in his eyes. Fear, like he knew more than he was saying. That afternoon, I called Patterson and Associates directly. A receptionist answered. "Hi, I'm with building security. I need to ask about Mr. Patterson's office. Has anyone been working late recently?" "Mr. Patterson?" "Sir, David Patterson passed away 3 months ago. Heart attack. His office has been sealed pending probate. No one's been in there since his death." The phone slipped from my hand. A dead lawyer's office. A dead security guard from 1977. And somehow, they were connected to what was happening on the 7th floor. I spent the day researching Robert Chen, found his obituary, his employment records, even tracked down his daughter, who lived across town. She agreed to meet me at a coffee shop. Lisa Chen was in her 50s, a school teacher with kind eyes and her father's features. When I told her about the incidents at the building, she didn't seem surprised. "My father loved his job," she said. "He took pride in protecting people, in making sure everyone was safe. When he died in that fire..." She paused, sipping her coffee. "The other victims, they were all found in their rooms or in the stairwells, but Dad was found in the 7th floor corridor, going from room to room, trying to make sure everyone got out." "Do you think he's still there? Still trying to do his job?" She looked at me for a long moment. "My father spoke some English, but when he was stressed or emotional, he reverted to Mandarin. He would write letters to my mother in Chinese, even though she spoke perfect English. It was his way of expressing things he couldn't say otherwise. The document I found, it was covered in Chinese characters." "What did it say?" I showed her the photo on my phone. She studied it carefully, her expression growing troubled. It's a warning. He's saying that something is wrong in that building, that the dead don't rest properly there. And," she looked up at me, "he's asking for help." That night, I brought a Chinese-English dictionary and a notepad. If Robert Chen wanted to communicate, I was going to listen. The typing started at exactly 2:15 a.m. This time, I didn't try to enter the office immediately. Instead, I sat outside the door and waited. The typing continued for almost 10 minutes, then stopped. When I opened the door, there were 3 sheets of paper on Patterson's desk, all covered with Chinese characters. I photographed them and carefully transcribed what I could. Back in the lobby, I spent the rest of my shift translating. The message was fragmented, but clear enough. "Fire not accident. Man in suit started fire. 7th floor. Patterson knew. Patterson tried to tell. They killed Patterson. Heart attack not natural. Building cursed. Souls trapped. Help us find peace. My hands were shaking as I read the translation. Chen was claiming that the 1977 fire was arson, and that David Patterson had somehow discovered this, and that Patterson's recent death wasn't natural. I didn't know what to do with this information. Go to the police? They'd think I was insane. Go to the media? Same result. But the next night, something changed. Instead of typing, I heard voices from Patterson's office. Multiple voices, speaking in urgent whispers. I approached the door and pressed my ear against the glass. I could make out words in English and Chinese, overlapping and competing for attention. Not supposed to happen. They covered it up. 15 people died. Justice. When I opened the door, the voices stopped. But this time, the office wasn't empty. Robert Chen stood behind Patterson's desk, translucent but clearly visible. Asian man in his 50s, wearing a security uniform from the 70s. Next to him stood David Patterson, equally ghostly, in an expensive suit. They looked at me with expressions of desperate hope. Chen spoke first, his English heavily accented but understandable. "You can see us. You can help us. What do you want?" Patterson stepped forward. "I found the truth about the fire. I was building a case, gathering evidence, but they got to me before I could expose them." "Who?" "The insurance company, the real estate developers. They needed the hotel gone to build this complex, but the owner wouldn't sell, so they arranged an accident." Chen nodded grimly. "I saw the man that night, before the fire started. He didn't belong in the hotel, wearing expensive suit, carrying briefcase. He went to the basement, near the electrical room. I had documentation, photos, financial records, testimony from a whistleblower at the insurance company. Everything was in my office safe. But they killed you. Made it look like a heart attack, but they couldn't get into my safe. It's still there, behind the bookshelf. The combination is my daughter's birthday, 07-15-1982. Chen spoke urgently. 15 souls trapped here. We cannot rest until truth is told, until justice is done." "What happens if I help you?" "We find peace. The building becomes normal again. No more hauntings, no more trapped spirits." "And if I don't?"
Patterson's expression darkened. "The hauntings will get worse. More people will be affected. The building will never be safe." I looked at both ghosts, these two men who had died trying to protect others. "Tell me what you need me to do." The next day, I called in sick and returned to the building during business hours. I told the receptionist at Patterson and Associates that I was with building maintenance and needed to inspect the senior partner's office for potential water damage. The office looked different in daylight, warmer, more professional, but I could feel the weight of secrets hidden there. I found the safe behind the bookshelf, exactly where Patterson had said it would be. The combination worked on the first try. Inside were files, photographs, and a thick manila envelope marked Meridian Hotel Insurance Fraud Evidence. The documents told a story of corporate conspiracy and murder. insurance executives working with real estate developers to eliminate an obstacle to their billion-dollar project. The hotel owner had refused to sell, so they arranged for the building to burn down, planning to blame faulty wiring. But they hadn't counted on Robert Chen's diligence or on witnesses who saw their arsonist enter the building. Patterson had tracked down these witnesses, documented the conspiracy, built an airtight case, and they'd killed him for it. I copied everything and returned the originals to the safe. That night, I brought copies to the building and left them on my supervisor's desk with a note. "The ghosts told me where to find this. Do the right thing." The next morning, Tom called me at home. His voice was shaky. "Jake, where did you get these documents? Does it matter? Are they real?" A long pause. "Yeah, they're real. I'm turning them over to the FBI. This is huge." The story broke 3 days later. Insurance fraud, arson, multiple murders spanning decades. The FBI arrested 6 people, including 2 executives still alive from the original conspiracy. That night, I went to the building for my regular shift. The 7th floor felt different, lighter somehow. When I passed Patterson's office, I could see both ghosts standing inside, but they looked different, at peace. Chen bowed to me formally. "Thank you. Justice is done." Patterson nodded. "The souls are free now. We can rest." They began to fade, becoming more and more transparent until they disappeared entirely. I worked at the Meridian complex for another 2 years, never saw another ghost, never heard unexplained typing, never found mysterious documents. The building was just a building again. But sometimes when I walked past the 7th floor, I felt a warm presence, like someone watching over me with gratitude. The insurance executives were convicted of fraud and conspiracy. The families of the fire victims received substantial settlements, and 15 souls who had been trapped for decades finally found peace. All because a security guard was willing to listen to voices from beyond the grave.
I found my own name in the visitor log, signed in just 10 minutes before I arrived for my shift. The signature was perfect, too perfect. My name is Marcus, and I work security at St. Mary's Medical Center. It's a mid-sized hospital, about 400 beds, built in the 1960s, but renovated several times since then. I work the graveyard shift, 11 p.m. to 7 a.m., making rounds, monitoring the cameras, and dealing with whatever emergencies come up. Hospital security is different from office building security. People are here 24/7, patients, nurses, doctors, support staff. But there are still plenty of quiet areas, especially on the upper floors where they keep the long-term care patients and the psychiatric ward. That night started normally. I clocked in at 10:45 p.m. and got the handoff from Danny, the evening security guard. Standard briefing. Visitor parking was full due to a flu outbreak. They'd had 2 psych patients try to leave AMA earlier, and the elevator to the 7th floor was making weird noises again. I settled into the security office, a small room next to the main entrance, with banks of monitors showing feeds from cameras throughout the hospital.
My routine was simple: hourly rounds through each floor, checking doors and ensuring all restricted areas were secure. At 11:30, I started my first round. The hospital at night has its own atmosphere: dimmed lights, the constant background noise of ventilators and monitors, the occasional page over the intercom. You get used to it, but it never stops feeling slightly surreal. I took the elevator to the 7th floor first. This was the psychiatric ward, always the most secure area in the hospital. Magnetic locks on all the doors, cameras everywhere, restricted access for staff only. As I approached the nurses' station, I could see someone had left the visitor log book open. This was unusual. The psych ward rarely had visitors, especially not during night hours. I flipped through the pages, checking the day's entries. Most were from the afternoon and early evening: family members visiting patients, lawyers meeting with clients, the occasional clergy member. But at the bottom of the page was an entry that made me stop cold. Marcus Williams, security, 10:35 p.m. My name, my job title, and the time was logged as 10 minutes before I'd even arrived at the hospital. I called the nurses' station. "Hey, it's Marcus from security. Did anyone sign in around 10:35 tonight?" The nurse knight, Sandra, checked her computer. "No, we haven't had any visitors since about 8 p.m. "Why?" "Someone signed my name in the logbook, said they were security." "That's weird. I would have noticed another security guard. You're the only one on duty tonight, right?" "Should be." I radioed down to the main desk to confirm. Only one security guard scheduled for the night shift: me. No maintenance, no cleaning crew in the restricted areas. No one should have been on the 7th floor. I continued my rounds, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Every shadow seemed deeper, every sound more significant. When you work security, paranoia is an occupational hazard, but this felt different. On the 4th floor, I found another visitor log. Same thing: my name, signed in at 10:35 p.m., in handwriting that was mine, but too perfect. 3rd floor, same thing. 2nd floor, same thing.
Someone or something was impersonating me and had been in the hospital before I even arrived. I went back to the security office and pulled up the camera footage from around 10:35 p.m. The system keeps digital records for 30 days, so I could review exactly what had happened. I found the timestamp and started scanning through the feeds. Main entrance showed the usual traffic: staff coming and going, a few late visitors leaving. Nothing unusual. But when I checked the elevator camera, I saw something that made my hands shake. At 10:34 p.m., a figure in a security uniform had entered the elevator and pressed the button for the 7th floor. The figure was facing away from the camera, but the height and build were exactly right. Same uniform, same equipment belt, even the same slight slouch that I had when I was tired. I fast-forwarded through the footage. The figure exited the 7th floor and disappeared down the corridor toward the nurses' station. The camera angles weren't quite right to see the visitor logbook, but the timing matched perfectly. Then, at 10:41 p.m., the figure returned to the elevator and went to the 4th floor, then the 3rd, then the 2nd. Each stop corresponded exactly with where I'd found my forged signatures. The figure never turned to face any of the cameras directly. It was like it knew exactly where each camera was positioned and how to avoid giving a clear view of its face. At 10:47 p.m., the figure exited the hospital through a side door that was supposed to be locked and alarmed. I called my supervisor, but got voicemail. Night shift supervisors were notoriously hard to reach unless there was a genuine emergency. And what was I going to say? That someone who looked exactly like me had been impersonating me in the hospital before my shift started? I decided to investigate further. I printed out screenshots from the camera footage and went back to each floor to examine the visitor logs more carefully.
On the 7th floor, I noticed something I'd missed before. The signature looked perfect, but when I held it up to the light, I could see that it had been written with unusual pressure. Too light in some places, too heavy in others. Like someone was trying very hard to copy something they weren't familiar with. But more disturbing were the other signatures on the page. I recognized several staff members' handwriting, but looking closely, I realized that many of the entries from the past week showed the same pattern. Perfect signatures, but with that same unnatural pressure variation. Someone had been forging signatures in this hospital for days, maybe weeks. I went to the 2nd floor and found Sandra, the night nurse from the psych ward. She was making rounds, checking on patients. Sandra, can I ask you something? Have you noticed anything unusual lately? Staff members acting strange or people you didn't recognize? She thought for a moment. Actually, yeah. A couple of nights ago, I could have sworn I saw Dr. Martinez in the ICU around midnight. But when I checked the schedule, he wasn't supposed to be here. When I asked him about it the next day, he said he was home asleep. Anyone else? Now that you mention it, there have been a few incidents. Nurses seeing colleagues in areas they weren't assigned to. People signing in who don't remember being here. Everyone's been chalking it up to exhaustion. We've been short-staffed because of the flu outbreak. A chill ran down my spine. How long has this been going on? Maybe 2 weeks? It started right around the time that new patient was admitted to the psych ward. What patient? Sandra glanced around nervously. Room 714. Jane Doe, found unconscious in the park. No ID, no family, no memory of who she is or how she got there. But the weird thing is, she seems to know things about the hospital that she shouldn't. Staff schedules, patient names, even security codes. Is she dangerous?
Not violent, but unsettling. She watches people very carefully, like she's studying them. And sometimes, when you're talking to her, it feels like she's mimicking your facial expressions and voice patterns. I felt pieces of a puzzle clicking into place. Can I see her file? I shouldn't, but under the circumstances. Sandra led me to the nurse's station and pulled up the patient records on her computer. Jane Doe, approximately 30 years old, admitted 2 weeks ago with no identification. Preliminary psychiatric evaluation noted unusual behavior. Patient appeared to be observing and copying the mannerisms of staff and other patients. No signs of traditional mental illness, but profound amnesia regarding personal history. Most disturbing was a note from Dr. Patterson, the chief psychiatrist. Patient shows uncanny ability to mimic speech patterns, handwriting, and behavioral tics of individuals she observes. Recommend further neurological evaluation to rule out rare dissociative disorder. I need to see her, I said. She hesitated. She's probably asleep, and I'm not supposed to let non-medical personnel into patient rooms. This isn't about medical treatment. This is about security. I think she's connected to what's been happening.
We took the elevator to the 7th floor. The psychiatric ward was quiet, most patients sedated for the night. Room 714 was at the end of the corridor, isolated from the other rooms. Through the small window in the door, I could see a figure lying in the hospital bed. Even in the dim light, something about her seemed wrong. She was too still, too perfectly positioned. "She's awake," Sandra whispered. "Her eyes are open." The patient was staring directly at the door, as if she'd been waiting for us. When she saw me, she smiled. It was my smile. The exact expression I made when I was amused, down to the slight asymmetry where I'd chipped a tooth as a kid. "She's been doing that," Sandra said nervously, "copying expressions from anyone who looks at her." The patient sat up in bed and waved. It was my wave, the casual two-finger gesture I used when greeting people casually. "Open the door," I said. "I don't think—" "Open it."
Sandra used her key card to unlock the room. As soon as the door opened, the patient spoke. "Hello, Marcus." It was my voice. Not similar, identical. The same tone, the same slight regional accent, even the same way I pronounced my own name. "Who are you?" I asked. She tilted her head, studying me. "I'm whoever you need to be." As she spoke, her facial features seemed to shift slightly. Not dramatically, but subtle changes that made her look more like me. Her jawline became more angular, her eyebrows thicker, her nose broader. "What are you?" "I'm learning. Every day I become more complete, more human." She stood up from the bed, and I could see that her body proportions had changed too. She was taller than when she'd been lying down, her shoulders broader, her stance more masculine. "You've been impersonating hospital staff." "I've been practicing. It's hard to understand humans just by watching. I need to experience being human, to try on different identities and see how they fit." "You signed my name in the visitor logs." "Your handwriting is very distinctive. I've been studying it from the security reports you file every night. It took me several attempts to get it right." Sandra grabbed my arm. "We need to leave now." But I was fascinated and terrified in equal measure. "What are you, really?" The patient's appearance continued to shift, becoming more and more like me. "I don't know. I remember falling from a great height, then darkness, then waking up here. But I can't remember what I was before." "You're not human."
Not yet, but I'm learning. Each person I study, I absorb a little of their essence, their mannerisms, their memories, their way of being in the world. She was almost a perfect copy of me now, except for the hospital gown. Same height, same build, same facial features. Soon I'll know enough to leave this place, to go out into the world and be whoever I choose to be. What happens to the people you copy? For the first time, she looked uncertain. "I don't know. I take what I need, but I don't think it hurts them. They seem diminished afterward, but not damaged. I thought about Dr. Martinez, who couldn't remember being in the hospital when Sandra saw him. About the staff members who were seen in places they didn't remember going. You're stealing pieces of their identity. I prefer to think of it as sharing. They have so much humanity and I have none. Surely they can spare a little? Sandra was pulling at my arm more urgently now. Marcus, we need to call security. Wait, you are security. We need to call the police. But I was thinking about something else. If this creature could perfectly impersonate me, what was to stop it from taking my place entirely? Have you been to the security office? I asked. She smiled, my smile again. Not yet. But I've been watching the cameras. I know your routines, your schedule, your password for the computer system. MARCUS77. My password. Something I'd never written down, never shared with anyone. How do you know that?
I can see it when you type. The way your fingers move, the muscle memory. Once you understand how humans work, reading them becomes very easy. She was right. If she'd been watching me through the cameras for 2 weeks, she'd have learned everything about my job, my habits, my way of interacting with people. What's your plan? Tomorrow night, I'll leave this room during shift change. The nurses will think I've been transferred or discharged. Paperwork gets confused all the time in hospitals. I'll put on a security uniform and take your place. You'll probably stay home sick, suffering from a sudden bout of amnesia and fatigue. And if I don't? Her expression hardened. Then there will be 2 Marcus Williams working at this hospital. But only one of us will be real. People will start to notice the discrepancy eventually. They'll investigate, and they'll conclude that one of us is an imposter. But you're the imposter. Am I? After tomorrow, I'll have all your memories, all your skills, all your relationships. I'll be you in every way that matters. You'll just be the defective copy. I backed toward the door, but she was faster. Moving with inhuman speed, she blocked my exit. You can't leave yet. I need one more thing from you. What? Your memories, your experiences, everything that makes you who you are. She reached out and touched my forehead. The moment her fingers made contact with my skin, I felt something being drawn out of me. Memories, thoughts, emotions, everything that made me Marcus Williams was flowing into her. I saw my childhood, my first day of school, my parents' faces. But as each memory transferred, it became fainter in my own mind, like a photograph left in the sun too long. I tried to pull away, but her grip was too strong. Sandra was screaming behind me, but her voice seemed to come from very far away. Then the room filled with light, and I heard running footsteps in the corridor. Hospital security, the real kind, not just me, burst into the room. They'd been called by Sandra's screams, but when they saw 2 identical figures in the room, they didn't know which one to restrain. "Help me!" I gasped. "She's not human!" "Help me!" the creatures said simultaneously, using my voice. "He's trying to kill me!" The security team hesitated. We looked identical, sounded identical. Even our injuries from the struggle were mirrored on both bodies. But then Sandra stepped forward. Ask them something only Marcus would know. One of the guards looked between us. What's the code for the medication room on the 5th floor? I opened my mouth to answer, but the creature spoke first. 47821. That was correct. But how did I know that? My memories were confused, fragmented. I couldn't remember if I was the real Marcus or the copy. "What's your mother's maiden name?" the guard asked. "Rodriguez," we both said simultaneously. This continued for several minutes, question after question that we both answered identically. The creature had absorbed too much of my identity. There was no way to tell us apart. Finally, Sandra had an idea. Marcus always carries a scar on his left hand from when he cut himself fixing a bike chain as a kid. I looked at my left hand. There was the scar, a thin white line across my palm. But when I looked at the creature, she had the same scar in the same place. "She copied everything," I said desperately, "even my physical scars." But then I noticed something. My scar was old, faded, the kind of mark that comes from years of healing. Hers looked newer, like it had been artificially created just moments ago. "Look at the scars under magnification," I suggested. One of the guards had a magnifying glass on his equipment belt. Under magnification, the difference was clear. My scar had the irregular pattern of genuine tissue damage and healing. Hers was too perfect, too symmetrical. "That one's fake," the guard said, pointing at the creature. The moment she was identified, the creature's appearance began to shift rapidly. Her features became fluid, cycling through different faces, hospital staff she'd observed, patients she'd studied, even faces that might have been from before her amnesia. "I just wanted to be real," she said, her voice changing with each word. "Is that so wrong?" The security team called for backup and medical assistance. Within minutes, the room was filled with people trying to figure out how to contain something that might not be entirely human. But as they debated what to do, the creature made her decision for them. She walked to the window, opened it, and looked back at us one final time.
"I'll find another way," she said. Then she jumped. 7 floors up. No one could survive that fall. But when the security team checked the parking lot below, they found no body, just a shallow impact crater and some strange, organic-looking residue that seemed to evaporate as they watched. I spent the next week in medical observation while doctors tried to determine what had been done to me. The memory theft had left gaps, not huge ones, but enough to be noticeable. Some childhood experiences were hazy, certain work procedures took effort to recall. But I was still fundamentally me. The creature had taken copies of my memories, not the originals. The hospital officially listed the incident as a patient escape. Jane Doe was never found, and after a few weeks, the story faded into hospital folklore. But sometimes, when I'm making my rounds, I catch glimpses of faces that look almost familiar. Staff members who seem to know things they shouldn't. Patients who watch me with too much intelligence in their eyes. I think she's still out there, still learning, still practicing how to be human. And I wonder if next time she'll be better at it.
The maintenance request said check basement storage room B7 for water damage. Problem was, our building only has 6 basement levels. My name is David, and I was working the night shift at Riverside General Hospital when this happened. I'd been there about 3 years, long enough to know every corner of the building, every storage room, every maintenance corridor. Riverside is an old hospital, built in 1953 and expanded several times over the decades. The result is a maze of interconnected buildings, tunnels, and sub-basements that even the longtime staff sometimes get lost in. The maintenance request came through the computer system at 2:30 a.m. Standard procedure was to handle non-emergency requests during the night shift when there were fewer people around. I printed out the work order and grabbed my equipment. According to the form, room B7 had reported water damage from a possible pipe leak. The requesting department was listed as archives, document storage. I'd been to all the basement storage rooms over the years. B1 through B6 were clearly marked and contained everything from old medical equipment to paper records dating back decades. But I'd never seen a B7. I took the service elevator down to the lowest basement level, B6. The corridor was dimly lit with fluorescent fixtures, lined with heavy steel doors marking different storage areas. At the end of the hallway was a door I'd never noticed before. The sign read, B7, authorized personnel only, in the same font and style as all the other basement doors. But I was sure it hadn't been there before. In 3 years of working this building, I'd walked this corridor hundreds of times. I tried my master key. It worked. The door opened onto a staircase leading down into darkness. The air that drifted up was cold and carried a smell like old paper and something else, something organic and unpleasant. I flicked on my flashlight and started down the stairs. The walls were older than the rest of the basement, made of rough concrete that looked like it dated to the original construction. 20 steps down, I reached another door marked B7, document storage. Inside was a large room filled with metal filing cabinets and shelves of boxes, but these weren't medical records. The labels I could see were all dates, 1953, 1954, 1955, going back to when the hospital was first built. I found the area with reported water damage. Sure enough, there was a wet spot on the floor near one of the filing cabinets. But when I traced it up to find the source, I couldn't locate any pipes. The moisture seemed to be seeping through the concrete wall itself. I opened the filing cabinet to check if any documents had been damaged. Inside were patient files, but not the modern kind I was used to. These were handwritten records on yellowed paper tied with string. The first file I picked up was labeled Patient Number 001, J. Morrison, admitted 3/15/1953. I opened it, curious about the hospital's first patient. What I read made my blood freeze. The handwritten notes described a patient who had been found in the basement during construction of the hospital. Male, approximately 30 years old, no identification, severe amnesia. But what disturbed me were the additional notes. Patient exhibits unusual behavior. Claims to have been waiting in the basement for an unspecified period. Shows detailed knowledge of hospital layout despite building being incomplete at time of discovery. Recommend extended observation. There were dozens of follow-up entries documenting increasingly strange behavior. The patient would disappear from his room and be found in areas of the hospital that were still under construction. He seemed to age very slowly, looking almost the same after months of treatment. The final entry was dated 6 months later. Patient escaped during night shift. Comprehensive search failed to locate him. Recommend sealing off basement levels during construction phase. I pulled out another file. Patient 047, M. Chen, admitted 08/22/1953. Similar story, found in the basement, no memory, detailed knowledge of the building, but this file included photographs. The black and white picture showed an Asian man in his 30s wearing a hospital gown. But what shocked me was his face. I recognized him. It was the same man whose missing person poster hung in our security office. Michael Chen, a maintenance worker who had disappeared from the hospital in 1987. But according to this file, he'd been a patient in 1953. I flipped through more files, all basement discoveries, all showing the same pattern of amnesia and impossible knowledge. And many of the photographs showed faces I recognized. Hospital employees who had gone missing over the decades. At the bottom of the filing cabinet was a thick folder marked Project Foundation, Classified. Inside was correspondence between the hospital's original administrators and someone identified only as Dr. X. The letters described a subterranean research initiative that predated the hospital's construction. According to the documents, something had been discovered during the initial excavation for the hospital foundation. A series of natural caves that contained specimens of significant scientific interest. The hospital had been built deliberately over these caves, providing cover for ongoing research. The missing persons weren't disappearing. They were being taken underground for experimentation. But the most disturbing document was a map showing the true layout of the hospital's basement levels. According to this diagram, there weren't just 7 basement levels. There were 15, extending deep into the earth beneath the hospital. And all of them were marked as active research facilities.
I photographed documents with my phone and put the files back where I found them. As I was closing the cabinet, I heard footsteps on the stairs above. Someone was coming down to B7. I turned off my flashlight and hid behind one of the larger filing cabinets. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, like someone who knew exactly where they were going. The door opened, and I heard voices, at least 3 people, speaking in hushed tones. "The security guard is down here," one voice said. "Motion sensors picked him up 20 minutes ago." "Orders?" asked a second voice. "Same as always. Process him and send him down to sublevel 12. Dr. X wants to expand the security division." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure they could hear it. They were talking about me like I was a piece of equipment to be relocated. I peered around the filing cabinet and saw 3 figures in white lab coats examining the wet spot where I had been working. One of them was carrying what looked like a tranquilizer gun. "Spread out. He's still in here somewhere." I needed to get back to the stairs, but they were between me and the exit. The only other option was a door at the far end of the room marked Sublevel Access. Moving as quietly as possible, I made my way toward the back of the room. The access door was unlocked, opening onto another staircase leading even deeper underground. I could hear the search continuing behind me as I descended. This staircase was much older than the one from B6. The walls were carved stone, and the air grew warmer as I went down.
After what felt like hundreds of steps, I reached a landing with a heavy metal door marked B8. Through a small window, I could see a corridor lined with what looked like laboratory equipment. But I kept going down. If the map was accurate, I needed to reach sublevel 12 to understand what was really happening here. B9 was filled with large tanks containing floating specimens, things that might once have been human but had been altered beyond recognition. B10 contained rows of hospital beds with patients connected to machines I didn't recognize. The patients were all people I knew, hospital employees who had supposedly quit or transferred to other facilities.
And finally, B12. The door opened onto a vast underground chamber that extended far beyond the reach of my flashlight. The space was filled with hundreds of people, all in hospital gowns, all working at various tasks with mechanical precision. I recognized many of them: nurses, doctors, maintenance staff, security guards, all people who had gone missing from the hospital over the past 70 years. But they weren't quite human anymore. Their movements were too coordinated, too purposeful, and their eyes were wrong, completely black, like they were looking at something far beyond the physical world. At the center of the chamber was a figure in an elaborate white coat, directing the workers like a conductor leading an orchestra. When he turned toward me, I saw that his face was a patchwork of different features: eyes, nose, mouth, and skin tone, all from different people, sewn together into something that might have been human once. "Security Guard Williams," he said, his voice a harmony of different vocal cords. "Welcome to the Foundation. I am Dr. X, and you are exactly what we need for our next phase." The workers all stopped what they were doing and turned toward me. Hundreds of black eyes staring in perfect unison. "You see, David, we've been building something here for a very long time, a perfect organization, staffed by perfect employees who never tire, never question, never leave." He gestured to the workers around him. "Each of these individuals has been enhanced, improved, made into the best possible version of themselves. And now, it's your turn." I turned to run, but the stairway was blocked by more workers. Night shift employees I thought were my colleagues. "The process is quite simple," Dr. X continued. "We remove the parts of your personality that cause doubt, fear, and resistance. We enhance your loyalty, your dedication, your willingness to serve, and we give you purpose that will last for eternity." What are you? I am the culmination of 70 years of research. Each person who joins our foundation contributes something to my evolution: their knowledge, their skills, their essence. I am the collective intelligence of everyone who has ever worked in this hospital. The workers began to move toward me, their coordinated steps eerily silent on the stone floor. "But I am not cruel, David. I offer you a choice. Join us willingly, and you will retain more of your original personality. Resist, and we will take what we need regardless." I thought about the files upstairs, the decades of missing persons,
the patients who had been found in the basement over and over again. This thing had been feeding on the hospital staff for generations.
Because you found us. Because you have the curiosity and intelligence we value. And because your security position gives you access to information we need about the hospital's current operations. The workers were getting closer. I could see the surgical scars where their bodies had been modified, the places where foreign tissue had been grafted onto their original forms. There is nowhere to run, David. Every exit from this facility is monitored. Every possible escape route is blocked. You can make this easy or difficult, but the outcome will be the same. But as he spoke, I remembered something from the original building plans I'd seen during orientation. The hospital had been built over a natural cave system, but there had been flooding issues during construction. Emergency drainage tunnels had been installed to channel groundwater away from the foundation. Those tunnels weren't on Dr. X's map. I smashed my flashlight against the stone floor, plunging the chamber into darkness. In the confusion that followed, I ran toward where I remembered seeing water damage on the walls. My hands found a crack in the stone, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through. I could hear Dr. X shouting orders to his workers, but without light, their coordination was disrupted. The crack led to a narrow tunnel that sloped sharply upward. I crawled through pitch darkness, guided only by the sound of moving water ahead. After what felt like hours, I saw a faint light above me. The tunnel opened into a storm drain that led to the surface. I emerged in the hospital parking lot just as dawn was breaking. I went straight to the police, but they found no evidence of sublevel facilities. The basement levels B1 through B6 were exactly as they should be. No B7, no staircase, no door marked authorized personnel only. The work order that had sent me down there was gone from the computer system. According to the maintenance logs, I had never received any assignment that night. But I had the photographs on my phone, pictures of the files, the maps, the evidence of what was happening beneath the hospital. Except when I checked my phone, all the photos were corrupted. Digital artifacts and static where the images should have been. I quit my job that day and moved across the country. I couldn't prove what I'd seen, but I couldn't stay in a place where people were disappearing into something that shouldn't exist. 6 months later, I read in the local newspaper that Riverside General Hospital was being investigated for unusually high staff turnover. Over the past year, more than 40 employees had quit or transferred without giving proper notice. But what really caught my attention was the final paragraph of the article. The hospital administration was pleased to announce that they had recently hired a new head of security, a highly qualified candidate who had impressed them with his extensive knowledge of the facility. The new head of security was named David Williams.
They even included a photograph with the article. It was me, but not me. The same face, but with those black eyes I remembered from the workers' underground. Dr. X had gotten what he wanted, after all. Sometimes I wonder if the real David Williams is still down there in sublevel 12, working alongside the hundreds of other people who thought they had escaped, and if the thing wearing my face is doing the same job I used to do, looking for new recruits to send down to the Foundation. I moved again after seeing that article, and then again when I started noticing people in my new city who looked familiar. former hospital employees walking the streets with those same black eyes, watching me with patient intelligence. I don't think you can really escape something like Dr. X. I think once you've seen it, once you know it exists, it never stops looking for you. Which is why I'm telling you this story. Because tomorrow I'm disappearing again, going somewhere they'll never think to look. But if you ever find yourself working security at a hospital and you get a maintenance request for a basement level that shouldn't exist, don't go down there. Some things are better left in the dark. If these stories made you check your work schedule to make sure you're not covering a night shift anytime soon, hit that like button and subscribe to Storyplace. Every day there's new horror here. And trust me, these 3 guards weren't the only ones who learned that some buildings hold secrets darker than any shadow. Write in the comments, would you have investigated that maintenance request, or would you have found an excuse to avoid the basement entirely? See you in the next nightmare.